All right, let's go ahead and get started. So by way of introduction, my name is Kim and I am with the Zuri Group. Zuri Group is a full-service consulting and technology firm. So for those of you who don't know, we specialize in technology consulting for nonprofits, and we also do strategy and project management and best practices and upgrades, development, just about anything you can dream up or anything we can dream up to help you with, we can help you implement it. My name again is Kim Everett. I am the Director of Support with Zuri Group and have been with Zuri Group for about 2 years. My most recent experience has been with implementing Big Brothers Big Sisters Bowl for Kids' Sake peer-to-peer fundraising sites. So my team has done about nearly 60 of those, and I am also a big sister and a board member in our local Big Brothers Big Sisters affiliate. So a lot of my examples in this presentation are surrounding Bowl for Kids' Sake and Big Brothers Big Sisters because that's what I'm most familiar with, but I do have a few other examples here to show. And just for fun, I thought I'd throw in this picture of our bowling team this year. So this was the 2018 Bowl for Kids' Sake event here in Bend, Oregon, and our Zuri Group bowling team. I am the one in the upper left-hand corner behind the girl in the red sweatshirt, in case you want to know who's talking to you. Okay, so before we jump in here, I'm just going to kind of level the playing field, make sure everybody understands what we're talking about here when we talk about peer-to-peer and peer-to-peer fundraising. So, we have this new interconnected age that we're living in where people have ever expanding spheres of influence. So, they start with, back in the day, we only had access to our sphere of influence that was, maybe the people we talked to on the phone or our family. And now we have social media, we have email, we have, 200 Twitter followers, etc. So people have this expanding sphere of influence that you can tap into. And especially for, nonprofits and your fundraising efforts, you really do need to include some sort of peer-to-peer fundraising strategy in your overall, donor management and fundraising strategy. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is focusing on the peer-to-peer fundraising strategies and how, in particular, surrounding motivating and recruiting participants. So we're going to go through the agenda here of what motivates your participants and talk a little bit about that. Talk about the components that are needed for an easy-to-use platform and how to leverage that. We're going to talk about the effect of competition and how to motivate people through that little insertion of the competitive spirit. And then cultivating your strongest supporters and how to communicate to them and how often, and we'll go through some specific examples of that. And then also a review of, I've got 3 case studies at the end here. Okay, so starting with the first strategy here of knowing what motivates your participants. So I'm going to use this in the context of Bowl for Kids' Sake, because again, that's what I'm most recently familiar with. But the first one is, so, you may think you know what motivates your supporters, but what I would encourage you to do is actually ask them. So, you may know that you have some really good supporters that come back every year that are team captains for your events or your board members or something like that. But, you might want to just sit down to coffee with them or something at some point and ask them what about your mission they connect with. So, what impacts them? Why do they come back year over year? Why do they donate their time? And you might find that you can use that information, talk to a couple people and find that you can use that to refine your story and refine your mission. And then you can use that to tell that story often. So, and when it's in your general emails or your newsletters or your, campaign recruitment, or maybe it's convincing someone to do, their own individual do-it-yourself type peer-to-peer event. But there are, you can take that information and refine your story with it. And then another point on refining your story is that impact-driven messaging. So you want to make sure that your impact is clearly stated. And so what I mean by that is taking it from a general, so using Big Brothers Big Sisters as an example, a general statement would be that, Big Brothers Big Sisters provides one-to-one mentoring, and mentoring makes the world a better place because kids grow up and they're more supported, and and they have some statistics to show that. But people will connect more with something that is either more specific and tangible or milestone driven. So specific and tangible in that scenario would be, it takes $1,200 a year to support a big and little match, and we need your help to expand our program. Or a milestone would be, and this is based on some studies done particularly on the younger generation of millennials, that they connect with milestones and how their impact in society is sort of globally focused. But you need to sort of bring it back to, something that they can do. So a milestone would be, we are looking to raise $50,000 with this event so we can open another mentoring program at this neighborhood school. And so then they can see, oh, I'm thinking globally, but I'm acting in my local neighborhood, and I'm helping this agency reach a milestone. So getting at the root of that kind of, the impact will help people really stay aware and focused on your mission. And then with regards to the event and the swag, so to speak, so in the Bowl for Kids' Sake event, we give away beer and prizes and pizza and that sort of thing. And I would just, encourage people to look at your event and understand what motivates people and why people come. So in this case, the Bowl for Kids' Sake event, it's a fun event, and, people like it. Bowling is fun, and you don't have to be good at it to have a good time, and, all that sort of thing. So, so that's great. Certainly nobody ever attended a fundraising event just to get the t-shirt. So, we may say, well, maybe we don't need to give away t-shirts. But then maybe you have another reason you want to give away t-shirts, because it's in fact a place that you can highlight your sponsors, and you have some marketing obligations that come with that. So, there are pros and cons certainly to all of the things you do, and the swag and the beer and the food and all that stuff you give away. You may test taking, we periodically test removing one of those elements and seeing how it impacts the event, just in case we can save any money, because any money we're spending on t-shirts and beer is less money that the organization uses for programs. So it's another sort of way to test the theory of what motivates your participants, and perhaps refine that a little bit and net out more money without losing any involvement. Okay, so moving on to the second strategy is the online tools. So, again, using that Bowl for Kids' Sake as an example, this is an event that's been going on for, over 50 years. And, back in the day, they had pledge sheets, and, frankly, some agencies still do. And that's okay. But the challenge with those paper pledge sheets is that, people didn't collect them, or it was really time consuming to collect them, or, people just didn't follow through, or that sort of thing. But now in our new mobile age, our new, digital age, we have so many tools. There's over a dozen peer-to-peer fundraising tools out there in the world. And so you could, choose to use one of those and really leverage it to help your event along. So for example, what to look for in a tool, you want to make sure it's easy to use and mobile friendly. So, you want to make sure that people can go through a very streamlined registration process and then turn around and start fundraising right away with very little effort, because, you know, people have shorter attention spans and instant gratification. You know, we've got that sort of Amazon one-click effect where everybody just thinks anything you do online should be easy and one click. So, you know, do the least number of clicks as possible to get to, you know, to get to the fundraising piece. And then make sure that your tool, that you've configured your tool to have pre-populated page templates, you know, compelling photos for them to choose from, email templates, built out thank you messages, you know, everything that you could possibly put any default or templated content in, do. You know, again, make sure you're telling your story and that it's really consistent messaging with the mission and that people will connect with. And then, you know, and then they'll be more likely to use it and you know, put it out there to recruit their friends. You know, people often have some fear of fundraising or fear of asking people to help. So, you know, these items help overcome that fear, as well as making sure they know how to use it. So, for example, if you have an older demographic in your, you know, in your market area or, you know, your audience, you may need to spend a little more time with how-to videos, or, you know, walking people through how to register on the phone, or perhaps you even need to do it for them in some cases. And, you know, I understand that can be labor intensive. And with the younger generations, you may find that just step-by-step instructions and they've got it, or, you know, they just figure it out because they're already pretty mobile or tech savvy. But the studies do show that it is worth the time to help people get their fundraising page set up if they're struggling. And then they, you know, and then they're more likely to use it. And then the other piece of that is that people who fundraise for you one year and have a good experience will often come back the next year and do more. And so that's the thing to remember, is that if you're spending a lot of time this year helping someone get their page set up, and you're thinking, oh, geez, I don't have time for this, but, you know, maybe it has a long-term benefit that they'll fundraise for the next 3 to 5 years, and, you know, it'll work itself out over time. And then the other piece about an online tool, and also just, you know, encouraging those fundraisers is to recruit their friends, is that, you know, one of the other objections you run into is people say, oh, you know, my friends don't have any money, or I'm just a poor college student. But encourage them that, you know, the more people they recruit, the better, that small donation amounts matter. You may want to consider updating your fundraising donation page to have smaller dollar figure, you know, start at $5 or $10 if that's your, you know, if that's your sort of demographic area that you're working in, because, you know, the goal is, with peer-to-peer fundraising in particular, while we'd love it if every one of our supporters could just sit down and write us a, you know, $1,000 or $5,000 check. You know, the reality of this is that it's a volume. It's a volume matters kind of a deal. So if you get, you know, 20 people fundraising and they ask 20 people and all of those people donate $5, then you're going to be ahead. And, you know, even though they think that it's a small amount, you can just encourage them that, you know, the small amounts matter. And then the side benefit is that, you know, fundraising is, you know, one priority, but getting the word out on your mission is another priority. So the more people they include, even if they think they don't have any money, the more people will be exposed to the mission and learn about it, and goes along that, you know, cultivating or, you know, life cycle where they start as someone who's just been exposed to it, then maybe the next year they attend the event, and then maybe the next year they fundraise, and then maybe the next year they are a team captain. So it's all part of the long-term plan. Okay, and then the third concept here, talking about competition. So your event may already have some competition in it, or you may want to insert some competitive areas. So one way to highlight and really help sort of spur on the competition is to have, you know, these sort of rankings widgets on your fundraising site that show off, you know, who the leaders are. And so, here we're seeing the Engaging Networks platform, top teams, company rankings, and top participants widgets. And maybe you already have some competitive elements of your site, but it could be enhanced. So for example, if you have an event where you have a local bank that's kind of a yearly sponsor, maybe you go to that team captain at JD Bank and say, hey, will you challenge First Federal Bank or, some other local bank to a competition, and really spark that, sort of their natural rivalry, bumps them up into competing with each other, and people get more invested and more part of the, sort of jump on the bandwagon. And studies do show that teams raise more than participants in general. So, so there's a real advantage there of having, any kind of local company that that you could think of that's a supporter, a bank, a coffee shop, a brewery, a home builder, anything like that. Have them go out and challenge their competitors. The other thing about competition, and this is debatable depending on which scenario you fall into, but giving prizes can be very motivating. So, top fundraising team prize kind of thing. Sometimes it's motivating, and sometimes you don't need it. But in one example here, you just want to make sure, if you are going to give prizes, that you're evaluating that it is motivating. And so what I mean by that is, I'll illustrate with an example. With our local bowling event, we gave a top fundraising team prize, and for about 3 years, the same company won it. And what we were finding is that this company was raising so much money. Their teams were raising $10,000, and the nearest, the second place team was raising about $2,500. So it was actually demotivating for the lower place teams for that prize, because they're like, well, Hayden Holmes is going to win it again this year, so why bother? So then what we did was we decided to have a first, second, and third place prize, so that those second and third place teams were motivated to still go after it. And in fact, this year, the fourth place team found out that they were about $500 below the third place team. And on the day of the event, they rallied to move up into third place. So, arguably that spirit of competition gained us at least $500 more this year. So here's another screenshot. This is from Lustgarten's, their 5K walk, and this is from the Classy platform. And what I like about this one, and just wanted to call out as far as showcasing the leaderboards and the, sort of the competitive spirit here, is that they also do the top fundraiser, but then they do most donors, and then top team and most members across the top here. And so what I like about that is just another way to look at it. And if your goal is to have, if your goal is to increase participation, then getting this, most members metric in here is part of that sort of motivating or competitive spirit. Okay, so quick poll before I move on here. So we've got about 20 people on the call, and if you would type into the chat window, yes, if you call your team captains to welcome them, and no, if you do not, and we'll take a little quick poll here. It's a little easier when we have GoToWebinar to capture these polls, but I'll see if I can tabulate it quickly. So if you just pop into that GoToMeeting console and chat your yes or no, we'll give people a moment here to vote. Okay, so we've got a couple votes here. And so typically, I have polled a room of people before on this question, and our typical result was about 20 to 25% of people do call their team captains to welcome them. Looks like here, but based on our participation rate here, we've got about a 50%, but I suppose it's probably less than that. So that is our, one of the 10 ways to cultivate team captains. So that call or text them as soon as they register really sets the tone, gives them that kind of, personalized treatment. And so, when you're talking about reinforcing or motivating your strongest supporters, it is going to be largely about that attention, that personal attention. So, number 2, remind them of the impact they have, whether it's the programs, and again, it's that, whether it's a specific campaign or a milestone or a specific goal you're trying to reach. Remind them that teams raise the most money and that their participation has leadership impact, not only with their team, but beyond their team. And then number 3, schedule a regular Facebook post. So this could be a weekly post or, monthly, depending on how often you're posting and how far out your event is, but feature those team captains and their story. And a lot of times they'll put their story within their fundraising page, so you'll be able to use that without a huge amount of, story development effort. Number 4, give them advance notice of breaking news and behind the scenes updates. So this is, again, cultivating that spirit of that they're part of an elite group. And so, they get the sneak preview of things. And then number 5, sending them a Christmas card or some other personalized message outside of your event season. So this could be, a birthday card or, whatever you track in your database, but you can reach out just as something that's a nice touch. And then number 6, schedule a coffee. So, this kind of goes back to that asking why they're motivated. So, don't necessarily ask them for something in this coffee, but just chat with them, listen to their feedback about the event, about what they connect with your mission, and you may get some good learnings out of that situation. And they'll also feel special because you wanted to know their opinion. So then milestone, number 7, milestone, sort of acknowledgement. So, call them when they're at 75% and encourage them and congratulate them that they've made it that far. And then, call them when they've hit their fundraising or recruitment goal. And this could also be, depending on the relationship you have with that person and how far away your event is, this could also be an opportunity to ask them if they might be willing to increase their fundraising or recruitment goal. Because, they've killed it so far and there's 3 weeks till the event, so why not see if they want to keep going? And then this number 9 I like really for not just team captains, but for anyone. So, and if you have the bandwidth and won't get too much of a hand cramp doing it, you might want to send a handwritten note to your top donors, to your top fundraising teams, and your team captains, because everybody loves a handwritten note. The older generations love it because it reminds them of, back in the day when people were a little more polite, and then the newer generations like it because it's a novelty. So, and then number 10 here, take a team captain only photo at your event. So, again, this fosters that sense that they're in an elite group or, part of a special, the special group that is really making an impact. And because, we typically at events will take pictures of teams. Like, for example, the photo I showed you at the beginning is, the Zuri Group team, but what a great idea to take a picture of the team captains, group them in such a way, and then really broadcast it out there over the next few weeks, or post on social media and tag them and just really get, they'll feel special. You'll get more impactful photo messaging out because of it, and it's really a win-win. Okay, so communication strategies. So I like this marketing rule of 7. It's still relevant today. And when you research it, you know, I always kind of thought it was a little bit hokey. Like, where did they come up with that 7? Did somebody just, you know, pick it out of the air? But it actually dates back to the 1930s, where movie studio producers did research and discovered that it takes 7 times for someone to hear about a movie in order to be motivated or interested in seeing it. And so it's actually been studied quite a bit over the years, and it's based in the psychological principle of the mere exposure effect, also called the familiarity principle. And essentially, the mere exposure effect states that the more people are exposed to something, the more likely they are to take note of it and, in fact, develop a preference for it. So that's kind of an interesting thing to know. And then, okay, so how do we apply that to today? Because, you know, back in the 30s, they had radio and newspaper. Today we have, you know, a fragmented and overwhelming amount of, you know, possible marketing communication venues. So how I would group this today then is to say it applies to your email strategy, your social media strategy, and you need to have, because there's so much clutter out there, because people are inundated with information, you need to cut through the clutter by using impactful images, compelling video, and really honing in on your content, on your story. So, you know, kind of, again, going back to that messaging, finding out what people find to be, you know, what they connect with in your mission, and then really reinforcing that message. So to give you kind of a more concrete example here, so here's a sample communications calendar. This would be leading up to your event for past participants and team captains. So these are your strongest supporters already. So this would be, you know, I would say you would not want to use quite this many emails for your general recruitment campaigns. But just to take some kind of observations on these, so you can see this starts 3.5 weeks before the event, 3.5 months before the event. It is 14 emails in 15 weeks, so nearly 1 per week. And it is also accompanied by, so the email column shows you how many emails per week. The social media column shows you how many social media posts per week are recommended, and then you would complement them. You would scatter them over different days. And the other thing to note here in this calendar is that the program story, you know, your message, your impact messaging, is in 7 out of the 14 of these emails, or of these, you know, message topics. So it, you know, just kind of reinforces that point of getting the message out there while you're recruiting for your events. And then not to, you know, it doesn't show the post-event email communications calendar, but don't forget about that post-event stewardship and, you know, messaging to people, thanking them for being part of the event, thanking them for being a team captain, posting those pictures, posting things on social media about the event. Really do, it has an afterlife that lives on for a period of time that you can really use to your advantage. And then people feel good about it. They remember how much fun they had. And then, you know, that gets you further along the path of nurturing them to come back next year. Okay, so let's look at a couple of case studies that these agencies or these organizations use some or all of these principles and best practices, and, you know, the ways they were successful, sort of how they did it. So this first event we're going to look at is the Big Brothers Big Sisters of Broward County, who had a group of women called Women on the Verge. It's it's an ongoing group that they had decided they wanted to put on a modeling event. So just like a runway walk with, a lot of them have little sisters, so the bigs and the littles on the runway. And while modeling, the agency was very skeptical. They're like, oh, modeling people, that's intimidating. We don't want to send the wrong message about, body image and all this kind of stuff. But it turned out to be a great event. They even were able to recruit 2 men from the neighboring group called Men on the Edge. And they started out with an individual participant goal of $1,500 and an event goal of $20,000, and ended up just knocking it out of the park and raising $55,000. And this was purely done by peer-to-peer fundraising efforts. And what they did was, they had a good online fundraising tool. They used the Engaging Networks platform. They really focused on this spirit of competition. So this runway rankings widget was right on their donation page, and you basically could choose which model you wanted to donate to. And then when you click through on the model, each person, they had started with some good templates, and then each person really spent a lot of time telling their story and how they connect with the mission. So in this example, Diana talks a lot about her little sister and the Women on the Verge group, and how, this is a passion for her. And then on her fundraising page, you can buy tickets to the event or just donate. So what this allowed them to do is to have, they were able to sell tickets or just solicit a donation, and that was attributed back to that fundraiser. So they really use that power of, each person's sphere of influence and connecting to the mission to get the word out. And with that $55,000 they raised, they funded 8 scholarships for littles, the children in their program, to have college, higher education training. So that's one example of that, those best practices being used. Now here's another one. The Y in Central American has a turkey trot 5K. And the first year they did it in 2012, they had about, they raised about $500 in peer-to-peer fundraising because they didn't have an online tool. So then when they moved to the Classy platform, in that first year, they went from $500 to $41,000. So clearly having an online tool made a huge difference in their peer-to-peer fundraising dollars. And then they did extensive post-race reporting and analysis, and sort of enhanced their platform. And then in that second year of having an online platform to use, they raised 46% more. And that was not a large increase in participants. So again, that sort of reinforces that point that people who are, multi-year participants, when they come back that next year, they're typically going to, they're going to do better. They got it figured out the first year. Now this year they're going to raise more or recruit more, or, sort of do more if they're comfortable with the tool. And then in that third year, 2015, they, they adjusted their communication strategy and really did a lot of sort of off-season, keeping in contact and sharing pictures and, really following up with people, keeping them engaged in the mission and reminding them that next year's event is, only 6 months away, or whatever the case is. And so they were able to increase participants by 19% and fundraising efforts as well. Okay, and the third case study we're looking at here is the Heart and Stroke Foundation. of Canada, and they do the Jump Rope for Heart. So that's an event in elementary schools. And they used as their online fundraising tool TeamRaiser, so Blackbaud product. And they had 42 mobile optimized TeamRaiser sites, and then they fed into one cohesive program site, and Zuri Group helped implement this strategy. And a couple of things to note about, about the event site that are using all these best practices. Their registration process is very, very good, very streamlined. It's just step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 3, you do a search, and the elementary schools are pre-populated, so you just then click view or join. They do foster that spirit of competition with their school's leaderboard. So it's the schools competing against each other, which again is, sort of teams versus individuals. And, they can go in and look at this and say, ooh, Hammond Bay, we're only, $25 away from catching up to Nelson Elementary. Come on, let's, we got this. So the other thing they did here, which I think is interesting and goes back to that discussion of, whether your event is better served with fundraising prizes or not. They do offer fundraising prizes for the kids. And I think, they have figured out that, kids like toys and kids are motivated by fun things like that. So they have fundraising prizes at very approachable levels. So that's, motivating for kids that even if you only raise $25, you still get a prize. And then they have an online bonus where you get up to 3 additional prizes when you fundraise online. Because these are children, there's some parental controls on the site, and their pages are not public, so the parents, would need to send out the fundraising page or whatnot. So they've got some good parental controls on this. But I think it's an interesting discussion of, again, what's motivating and how to recruit people. And then what I think I forgot to mention back on the Glam Slam event page was that they did not have prizes for the top fundraisers, but they still had people raising over $5,000 each because they were in a community of people that knew each other, and it was a very small, it was 7 to 10 fundraisers competing in a small group. So they didn't choose to have fundraising prizes because they were motivated by bragging rights and sort of this, little bit ability of heckling each other and, returning champion and this kind of terminology that, they didn't, as it turns out, feel they needed to give prizes to those people, but yet they were still very motivated to compete. So it's all kind of an interesting discussion based on your event and your demographic and how many fundraisers you have and all that good stuff. Okay, so coming to the end here, thank you again for joining us. And just to kind of recap the key takeaways, I hope you got at least 1 or 2 little tips that you didn't know before that you could take away and use. But to summarize, this, peer-to-peer fundraising is not going away anytime soon. So it's time to figure out how to make best use of it. In mission and impact messaging is really key to cutting through the clutter and engaging people. That hands-on training is important, and even though it's resource intensive, hopefully it has benefits over time in the long range and is, worth that initial upfront investment. That you definitely need a good online tool to help people fundraise and, complete the process, and that giving them templates and pre-populated content is key to getting them going. And then that high-touch marketing communication strategy leading up to the event, during the event, post-event, that's what keeps people coming back year after year. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, I will be happy to answer them at this point. I don't see any in the chat window so far. but if you have one, go ahead and type it in. It doesn't look like we have any. So I think I'll go ahead and wrap up. But if you have questions that we didn't cover, or if you are interested in doing peer-to-peer fundraising, but you're not sure, you know, what kind of event you want to do, or maybe you want to add a new event, go ahead and email me after this presentation, and I will be happy to send you a list of sort of brainstorming sites that have various peer-to-peer events, and get the brainstorming juices flowing. And or, you know, Zuri Group also does technology and strategy consulting if you need any help around that area. So thanks again for your time. I'll check one more time for questions. Nope, looks like we're good. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.